To stain your project, you first need to make absolutely sure that everything is sanded very well. I don't see vertical lines through your door, through anywhere on your nightstand. Also that you've sanded around here where the scoop cut is, and that's on both sides. This one also has some holes that we put in when we were doing the shaper. Make sure those are filled up as well. I'm only going to focus on the front, so I've got this all prepped, sanded, and ready to go. I would also recommend that you make sure to sand right where these sharp corners are, on the outside and on the inside here where this decorative cut is, the cathedral. Because when you spray it with lacquer later, it doesn't stay on. It doesn't stick to a sharp corner. One little ding and it cracks off. So make sure to just hit it with a tiny bit of sandpaper for a moment, just around it a hair. Now that it's all prepped, let's go ahead and start. Now, of course, the gloves, just ask for, this is called stain for a reason. It stains anything that it touches. Also, if you want a lab coat, I've got a few extras. That way you're not getting your clothes dirty. So once you get the stain out, and I have 3 different kinds. I have a lighter, well, I should say a medium stain called fruit wood, and that's what this is, probably the most common one we use. I have a dark stain called dark walnut, and I have a red stain that kind of mimics the color of cherry. It's called Cordova, and it's in the back. Now, whenever you take a stain, you want to stir it up. All of the things that make it dark, the pigment settles to the bottom. So I want to show you what I'm talking about here is when I just stir it up just a little. And you can see there's a little bit of pigment on the end of that, this big ball of goo. All right, now I can feel it down here as I'm stirring. So make sure you take the time to stir it up till you don't feel all that goo at the bottom. That shouldn't be there. That needs to all be put back in. So go ahead and stir it up really nice. And even though it did plop a little bit, that's why I've got my gloves on. So that's perfectly fine. So stir it up. Now that you've got it all stirred up and you're ready to go, I don't see any globs on the back, you're ready to actually stain. Remember that stain has to go on before lacquer, so you have to plan ahead on this. I'm going to switch positions here. Now as you can see, the door has a few blotches. It's just because some of it just fell on, but that's okay, all the stain's going to blend. You need 2 rags, a small one to apply and a bigger one to wipe it off again. So simply take the rag and dip it in, and you can be fairly sloppy on this. Okay, now I've got a lot of stain. There's a reason that I have a ton of stain on there at the first. Let me get this done first and then I'll show you why. Okay, so I've just done the whole front. Now normally when you're staining this door, your whole project is put together. The door is vertical, so everything is wanting to run down. And that's okay. Don't worry about it if it's running and you have big globs everywhere, because you're just going to wipe it off again. Okay, and then get the outside edge. Now, the most common mistake students will do is they'll do this, but if you look really close on the ends, right there, you didn't quite get the corner in there. That's why I put so much stain on the rag, especially on the inside here. So it kind of goes underneath that board in there, and it doesn't leave this little white ring all the way around like it will here. So make sure to go ahead and just glop it on there. Now I don't want it running on the floor, of course. It doesn't need to be that much. But enough so that when you squeeze, a little bit comes out and gets in those areas. Okay, so I'm going to get just a little bit more. It should be good to do the rest of the outside of this door. Again, I still got a little white there. A little push and squeeze some of that stain in there. Now you'll also may notice that the end grain gets darker than the edge grain. That happens all the time. This is very, very common because the end grain is basically a straw. It's sucking a lot of stain down very quickly. Edge grain is not. So end grain typically will be darker than edge. That's not uncommon. If you look in furniture in the store, that will usually be the case. All right, now normally I'll do the back as well, but for today I'm just demonstrating on the front. Now that you're done staining, take a rag and wipe it all off. Okay, just get every little bit around the edges as well. I use a fingernail to kind of get inside of this sharp corner. You want to get all that stain out of there, all the extra anyway, so that you don't leave fingerprints. Okay, so I do the edges really nice, and then kind of go back and hit it, because anytime I press my thumb, it'll leave a small mark. It's even hard to see on the camera, but it leaves a little mark. So now my staining is done, and you'll repeat this on the whole project, the whole door. And I'll do it on the back, and I'll do it on the sides and everywhere else. You put it on, you wipe it off, but you do it in sections. If I let this sit for a couple of minutes, it'll start to dry, and then when I wipe it off, it'll end up a little darker than this. And if you want that, that's fine. But I do it in a section. I do a side, wipe it, do the top, wipe it, do the front, wipe it, and so forth. I just work my way all around. So when you're done staining, If you still see little marks, on my door there are these tiny, tiny little marks that still go vertical that I didn't quite sand out. If that bothers you now, you can still sand it down right now and then restain. But if you let it dry and then want to sand it down and restain, it doesn't work. You can't match. It's impossible. I've tried many times. It just does not match. So if you do need to make any changes, any adjustments, do it while the stain is wet. This has to sit for about 4 or 5 hours or so to be completely dry. So you still have a lot of time. So if you're going to stain, make sure to get everything done. No white areas around your door, any of the decorative edges. Make sure it all blends the same color.